Welcome to the news and why it matters. I'm Sara Gonzales, joined today by Glenn Beck, Jason Buttrell, and Mr. Andrew Heaton. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Sure.
Glenn, what was the top story for you today?
Top story today for me is going to be a story that nobody really is paying attention to. It is a Native American man in a hospital named St. Joseph's in Tucson, and he is literally being starved to death by the hospital because he had an accident 3 weeks ago, and you will not believe the inhumane treatment that we are accepting as a nation now.
All right, Jason.
I feel like every time I come on here, I'm talking about Venezuela, it seems like, over the past couple of weeks. But I can't stop because every time you think it's going to die down or, the craziness is not going to ramp up, it gets crazier. And it started on Friday with some really nutty news, but it's true. And it's continuing through this week. So I'll lay it all out for you.
All right. Can't wait to dig into that. Andrew.
I'm going to talk about two of my favorite subjects, booze and power.
I'm listening. All right.
That's one of my favorite subjects.
A lot to get into. Before we do that, want to thank our sponsor, American Financing. Glenn, I know that you were a little bit reluctant to work with any kind of mortgaging loan.
I still am. I don't do any mortgage. I do commercials for all kinds of people all over the country, and I will not do any mortgage company except this one. And that's not because of any agreement. It's just because these guys I know. I've seen them in the worst of times. I saw how they weathered. I saw how they treat customers, and I believe in them. I don't believe in a lot of mortgage companies because I think they're just trying to sell you. For instance, bank, when I got my mortgage company, this is years ago, I signed on it and they were, we can do that mortgage for you and stuff. And soon as, literally, my pen came up from signing my name, and the loan officer said to me, "You realize you're never going to sell that house?"
No.
Yes. And I was like, what? Why would you? They wanted to sell the loan. And they thought it was kind of cute and funny. I didn't.
Wow.
These guys are on the straight and narrow. They don't get kickbacks from the banks. And if you need a mortgage, they're the people to go see.
And they're not commission-based, which I think is huge. So they're not in it for themselves to make a dollar. They really want to do what's best for you. You can go to AmericanFinancing.net, or you can call 800-906-2440. All right, Glenn.
Yesterday, I'm going to church, and I get an email from a friend of a mother of a boy. He's, I think he's 30, who's now in a hospital in St. Joseph's Hospital in Tucson, Arizona. He had a stroke on, I think, the 1st of January or the 31st of December. There he is. That's what he looked like just 2.5 weeks ago. This is what the hospital has done to him now.
Gosh.
Now, if you see, do you have any other pictures? If you have pictures of him with his legs, look at.
Wow.
He hasn't eaten or had any water because the hospital says, you know what, his brain is too far gone. He's really not responsive, and so we're going to not feed him or give him any hydration.
And he's in a coma, right? He had a stroke and then he was in a coma?
No. Well, he was in a coma, but he's out of the coma.
He woke up from the
coma.
And
he is not communicating except with his hands and his feet.
Okay.
And, his family will say something and he'll do that. Well, that's enough to me to say, wait, the brain is something that expands and is inflamed after an injury. It needs time to settle down and to heal. They have him, they look at him and say, oh, well, he's too far gone. We're going to stop feeding him. They don't even tell the family. How is
that not illegal?
I don't know. My guess is the reason why this is happening is because of universal health care is on its way, single-payer health care, because the system doesn't work without it. And so the insurance companies know nobody's going to stop us from doing this because this is what we're going to do anyway. This is what you do under universal health care. If this would have happened just 5 years ago, everyone would be reporting on this, and the politicians would care because the politicians would want some sort of socialized health care, and they would say, people are starving to death, and they are killing him because of insurance money. because the insurance company doesn't want to pay for it. But now the insurance company and the hospitals are all in it together with the government. There's nobody to call. Yeah. And so this is happening all over the country. I talked to Bobby Schindler today about this case. They have somebody that they can transfer to another hospital. They are asking for donations at their GoFundMe. If we have the GoFundMe page, could we just put that link there on the screen?
Get it up there in a second.
But they have a GoFundMe page to help pay for it. But here's a guy that has 2 children, was totally healthy, was a good, healthy guy, has a stroke. His daughters are still trying to unwind from, wait, what's happening? His family is still trying to unwind. There is something to be said for slow the process down. We don't just off people. But that's what we're doing. And I hope that people are calling the Archdiocese of Tucson, because it is a Catholic hospital. I don't know if they answer to the Archdiocese, but at least the bishop there might be able to lead a protest or lead something and beg for time, because the family will put him in hospice or in care elsewhere where he can have a chance to heal. That's all they're asking for. Give his brain a chance to heal.
It just feels like we're kind of in a crisis now as far as valuing life is concerned, because we've got, the new law in New York that allows you to abort babies up until birth. And, you've got Vermont, signaling that they don't believe that fetuses are people at all, and they don't have any independent rights.
More importantly, you have people celebrating abortions.
Yes.
And as I said last week, in the Netherlands, 25% of the people there died from euthanasia. 25% of the population there last year that died was euthanized. And they're euthanizing people that are saying, no, I don't want this. This is insanity. But this kind of stuff always goes hand in hand with Marxism. The first canary in the coal mine to drop dead is the Jew. When you start hearing anti-Semitic stuff, you're probably on the road to a Marxist kind of collective state. The next thing, babies and infirm.
And for those of you who are listening on the podcast and cannot see, we have that GoFundMe up. It is GoFundMe.com/David-Ruiz-II for David Ruiz II. I do also want to just bring into the conversation, and I want Jason and Andrew, I want you guys to come into this conversation, but I also don't think it's a coincidence that, we've got all of this going on, devaluing life, and then we've got, I know, Glenn, I talked to you about this last week, we've got, a 10-year-old boy who killed himself because his classmates were bullying him over the fact that he had a birth defect and had to have a colostomy bag. And he went to school and he was bullied so much for the fact that he had a colostomy bag that he killed himself at 10 years old. I see a correlation here of, the way that we are valuing life, and how it's reflecting on what we're teaching our children. Andrew, do you want to weigh in?
I think that I see the bullying thing. I didn't follow that story. I think there's a tremendous amount of anger and bile in the current culture. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you get into things like social media, and I imagine that probably factored into it, there's some kind of filter that we have when we're talking with one another face to face that doesn't happen. So like for kids that are on social media in high school, I do not envy them. I would not want to go through that. I don't know if I think it's necessarily correlated with a decline in appreciation of life, because I think that person taking their life is kind of a different scenario.
I think, hang on just a second. On that, though, I think that there is something to be said with the actual having to look at people in the eye. We used to say as kids, and I told them, and they'd say, did you say that? And you'd be like, no.
Yeah.
Okay, but now you do say that because you don't have to look at people in the face.
Emails tend to be a little bit more snippy than face-to-face conversation, because we've got we've got some kind of, the monkey part of my brain doesn't understand that when I'm on a computer, I'm looking at a piece of glass.
Yeah. But I think our kids are sponges too, right? So they're seeing how we're interacting with people, you know,
and I think
whether it be on social media or not. I think they're still paying attention, and that they don't have the filter that we have.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think that there is just this kind of groundswell of hate. I mean, we talked about the MAGA hat boys last week. I mean, I think that we're kind of, it's almost like we get up every week and we're like, okay, our job this week is to find a monster and drown it. And there's this like kind of catharsis that we want to do. But before I forget, I wanted to ask though, because I've not followed this story very closely, and far be it for me to inveigh against the free market. I'm a free marketer. However, this guy's in a Catholic hospital, a private hospital. Why would that be emblematic of socialized healthcare or of single-payer healthcare?
Don't know if it is. I'm guessing the ones that I have seen in the past in America always boil down to money.
Yes.
Okay. Whether it's private or not, it just boils down to you're going to cost too much money. Out. I will tell you that I don't think the insurance companies, they're not afraid anymore. Okay. They were afraid of bad publicity, but they're not afraid really of bad publicity anymore because they are in bed with Obamacare and the government and the hospital thing. It's all juiced for everybody to make money now, and everybody's in it. So you don't have those, you still have the evil insurance corporations, but you don't have the will or the politician that wants to take them on and take them down. You don't have that anymore. And that's only going to get worse as we go more and more towards single-payer healthcare.
I'd also like to add really quickly, I'm not sure if we have confirmation that he was on an insurance policy, but I see this, and my background is in insurance, I see this happening usually when the patient has no insurance. So it's the hospital then making the decision, okay, we know we're not going to get reimbursed by the insurance company, so this is all basically free treatment at this point, right? So then it's the hospital making a decision based on cost that we don't want to keep this patient alive because we know it's going to cost us X amount and we're not getting reimbursed by anyone.
And here's the weird thing. Normally, you will take out the feeding tube. The breathing tube. And the breathing tube you'll either get well from that or you'll die. Breathing is, assisted life, but not food and water, at least in most people's minds. They left the breathing tube in. And the question is, why? Why wouldn't you try to take the breathing tube out? And if he dies on his own, then he dies on his own. Why would you keep his breathing going and then starve him to death?
Yeah, that is bizarre.
Jason, I want to bring you into the conversation.
When you said Tucson, I was just waiting for you to say Tucson, United Kingdom, or something like that, because I just cannot believe that is what's happening here. My first question is, because like Andrew, I haven't really followed the story that much, but has there been, what's the legal situation right now?
Legal situation, they're trying to get, the mother has guardianship, but she's trying to get him released. I said yesterday, because look, this story isn't even out until today. I think we were the first national story on it, national voice on it. I yesterday said, if you can get to New Jersey, that's the only state that I know of in the union that doesn't consider food and water to be extraordinary means. You can get him there. Let's get him there. If you need an airplane or whatever, we'll do it. They think he's too fragile to move. They're just trying to get him. She met this morning at 9 with the doctors. I haven't heard yet, but she was just trying to get him hydrated. Just please get some liquid into my son. Then let's get some food into him and get him a little more healthy because he's completely unresponsive now.
But the courts aren't stepping in, are they, and saying,
no.
So then it's literally just a case of convenience. It's not convenient for the hospital to pay for this if the insurance company is not going to cover it.
With our life.
That is so ridiculous. I mean, it's the same, issue that they'll have with late-term abortions. So literally, they'll be able to do that because of convenience. They'll say something else because of health reasons or whatever, but they'll argue emotional state. They'll do it it'll be for convenience. I mean,
it's written right there in the law.
I mean,
so they don't even have to stretch.
In the Netherlands, it's part of the law. You cannot request assisted suicide if you're suicidal or depressed. Okay. If you're suicidal and depressed and you're otherwise healthy, no, we can't do it. They just changed that. There was a 30-year-old man 31, he had been depressed his whole life. And he went to a doctor and he said, I want to end my life because there's no reason for me to live, and I've always felt this way. He'd been to 1 million doctors. He is depressive. Nothing was working for him. His parents said, yes, he shouldn't be killed. Well, psychiatrists said, wait a minute, you can't kill somebody who is depressed. They killed him anyway. Against the law, they killed him anyway, and now the hospitals are banding together to try to get all psychiatrists cut out of that loop for a diagnosis of euthanasia. Are you kidding me? Now you're going to take the mental people out and say, no, if it's a mental reason, no psychiatrist can look at this. We'll decide. It's insanity. Once you start down this road, it gets darker and darker and darker. And I warn you, if we don't stand together on this now, we will do worse things than have ever been done before because we have the technology to do it quickly.
All right, back in a minute. We actually just got an update on David Ruiz's situation, but before we get into that, we want to thank our sponsor, Relief Factor. So a lot of Americans right now are in a lot of pain, like all the time, right? You might be getting that age where just everything hurts, or you may have been in some sort of car accident. Like me, I was in an accident and hurt I have a bunch of protruding discs in my spine, which feels awesome, let me tell you.
All the time.
Yeah, all the time.
Right.
Glenn, I know you had an affliction that
we all have our own thing. Arthritis, just everyday pain. We all have it. Inflammation is the big enemy, and if you can get rid of inflammation, a lot of your pain goes away. And so, what does this do? Relief Factor takes away inflammation. It has 4 main ingredients. It's 100% natural, and it reduces inflammation. 70% of the people who take it go on to order more month after month. I'm one of those. That means 30% who take it, they're out $20. It didn't work. But how much is getting out of pain worth to you?
Yeah.
Get out of pain.
It is life-changing. You can order your 3-week Quick Start Pack now for $19.95 by going to relieffactor.com. All right, so the update that we just got from one of our writers, Mike, on the David Ruiz situation. So he just got off the phone with one of his advocates, and he told us that today the hospital has agreed to keep giving him hydration. And tomorrow they will start giving him nutrients again until he is stable enough to move to New Jersey.
I don't know if that was this show, but this show is the only one that's talked about it because nobody knew about it yesterday. But the press release was sent out this morning. We spoke about it this morning. Bobby Schindler arrived last night. And for them to completely reverse themselves is a miracle.
Okay, so this is just ridiculous. So for 2 weeks, this guy's life has not been an issue for them. They're like, okay, screw it. We're just going to let him go because they can't pay for it, more or less. But then all of a sudden...
Well, I just want to clarify. They would likely never admit to that. Because in the past, it's never been that the hospital would just admit we're making this decision based on cost, but that's what it turns out to be.
They said that it's because he'd have no quality of life. Mm-hmm. And he said they spoke to the mom, David's mom, and said, you don't know what life is going to be like for a guy who is this athletic and this strong and blah, blah, blah. And for him to then come back out of this, his life is just going to be horrible. Well, that's not for you to decide. I know a guy literally with no arms and no legs. He's a motivational speaker. He drags himself out on stage, literally rolls out on stage and like an inchworm comes up to the microphone, which is laying on the floor, and he looks at the crowd and his first word is, so what's your problem? That guy's happy, married, has kids. Don't talk to me about my choices in life. Some people make it, some people don't.
So we will make sure to keep you guys updated on the latest with this case. And remember, you can go to the GoFundMe. It's gofundme.com/David-Ruiz-II.
And we will have an update on that. We're going to talk to his mother tomorrow morning on radio.
On Glenn Radio. All right, be sure to tune into that. Jason, what's going on in Venezuela?
Is it fixed yet?
It's all done. They're all good. Yeah,
they're all going on vacation to Caracas. Disney World Caracas.
So this just a real quick update. It started last week. The entire world pretty much came out in support of their now interim president, which I cannot pronounce his name, Guaido, I think. So I think that's
sure.
What it is.
Yeah, you're good.
So he is now the recognized interim president for pretty much the entire world. With the exception of Russia, China, Iran, Turkey.
There's a theme there.
Well, yeah, I was like, what do these have in common?
Cuba.
Cuba. Some of these are not democracies. Some of these claim to be democracies, but it's this kind of like this further polarization within our own, I guess, democracy civil war, really.
Yeah. Any thugocracy is for him.
Or any hyphenated democracy, where it's like, well, it's vertical democracy. That means it's not a real democracy.
Right.
Vertical, anything with a hyphen in it, it's not real.
There is this kind of like splintering apart of the world like this. There's the side of, authoritarian, style democracy like Russia, and more of what you'd call like a liberal-based democracy. But that is kind of how the world is splintering apart. Well, they had a huge rally last week. It was hundreds of thousands. I should have had that the video to play here because it was insane. It literally looked like 500,000 people on the streets of Caracas, but that's how it was all over the country. And these protests were different from the ones that happened a couple of years ago because the ones a couple of years ago were kind of like the yellow vests in France now. They're like, hey, on Facebook, you want to show up? Yeah, let's all protest because it's fun. That's kind of how they were back in 2017. Well, this time, they started months ago. And not only was it between the different organizations within Venezuela, but they were reaching out to people all over the world. They were reaching out to the European Union. They reached out to us. And literally within minutes of this interim president declaring that he was the legitimate president and they were opposing Maduro, every other country, including us that started it, backed this guy. So there was a lot of coordination globally going on here. Well, these protests and demonstrations haven't stopped. They've been going on. I think 50 people have been killed. Hundreds have been injured.
Because Maduro hasn't resigned. He's still there.
He's staying defiant. Basically the citizens of Venezuela are waiting for the military to join their cause, to jump in with them. Until that happens, they're probably not going to get
They're
what they want.
probably not going to because they're all making money from Maduro's.
Yeah, he's propped up by the military, isn't he? Like, wasn't he like the military and Hugo Chavez were buddies? Yeah.
Yes,
Spread the wealth with the military if you're a dictator.
that's exactly right.
Noted. Thank you, Glenn.
You're welcome.
Watch out, Luxembourg.
They've been cut in since the very beginning. The richest people are the people in government, like Maduro, and he's cut in the generals into this whole racket. So they have very good reason to stay there because they want to remain millionaires. So the interim president has called for new protests to start Wednesday. There's going to be another massive one in 2 days on Wednesday. There's going to be another massive demonstration on Saturday. This story got even crazier. I think it was last Friday when we said that, you know, all options were on the table. If they move against the protesters, we might get involved militarily, or if they messed with our embassy, we might get involved militarily. Well, overnight, a cargo plane that landed in Cuba, came somewhere from some conflict areas in Eastern Europe and Africa and a couple other places.
Guess who?
Landed in Cuba and then went from Cuba and landed in Venezuela. They're Russian contractors. This is like
Russian Blackwater.
They're called.
This is what they did in Ukraine.
Okay, I want to leave it on a. Let's leave it on a cliffhanger because we got to take a break, so we don't have time to get into it all. So we'll be back with more.
Venezuela is just West Russia. We can all agree with Venezuela.
I know it's a bummer that there will be no State of the Union coverage from us. We had talked about it previously. We were like, yeah, we're going to have State of the Union coverage. And then Nancy Pelosi made sure that that didn't happen. But we are having a special that I think everyone is going to enjoy. It is the Blaze TV's Media Meltdown taking place tomorrow. It is a special live episode. It's from 6 to 8 Eastern. And Mr. Glenn Beck will be a big part of it. Eric Bolling is hosting.
Eric Bolling is hosting this, and I was in a meeting today about it, and it sounds really, really good. Everybody we could get on a plane, get down here. Bill O'Reilly, I think, is joining us for this as well. It's all tomorrow. It's not on television network, only online, blazetv.com, or on social media, live, commercial free.